Hi, this is Jason Tolmie, and I'm going to take you through the Canberra College Wellbeing session on sleep health. Hopefully, you've all just been to menti.com and you've quickly answered that question about how many hours sleep you got last night. We'll give it a couple of minutes for all the information to come in, and I'll get you to pause the video about halfway through, and you can have a look at what's there and have a bit of a discussion about how much sleep Canberra College students seem to be getting. What we're going to cover in this presentation is trends in adolescent sleep, reasons for these trends. We're going to talk a bit about screens, signs that you might have a sleep problem, and then some strategies to improve your sleep. I've got to give credit to Dr. Chris Seton. He's a pediatric and adolescent sleep physician, and his work has informed a lot of what I've put into this presentation. So, teen sleep deprivation has doubled in the last 15 years, from 35% to 70% of teens now receiving inadequate sleep. And we also know that teen mental health problems are increasing at a rate higher than ever. So that's a bit of a disturbing link. Not enough sleep and an increase in mental health issues. What are some of the reasons that this is happening? Well, first of all, adolescents have late body clocks. Our sleep chemical melatonin is actually released about an hour later in the night for adolescents than it is for other age groups. So that's totally understandable. But there are some other reasons too. Things like long shifts at part-time jobs, particularly for college students, social activities, assignments, extracurricular activities. We're kind of living in a culture of overscheduling where we're too busy to sleep properly. There's also a gap between social norms and what the scientific data says. We'll talk about that in a second. We get issues like competition about wakefulness, using lack of sleep as a bit of a badge of honor and bragging to friends about how late you went to bed and that kind of thing. So sleep's kind of being given a low priority. And the other big one I want to point out down the bottom there is social connectedness and FOMO. It's a powerful addiction, right? We're all kind of hooked on our phones and we don't want to miss out on the conversations that are happening, and that keeps us up. So just looking in a little bit more detail about that disconnect between science and social norms, I think we're living in a culture where the social norm is that we don't need as much sleep as what the science is telling us we really need. And we've had a real life drop off from an average of about 9 hours down to about 7.5 hours sleep in those last 15 years. But what the scientists are telling us is that for optimal, mental health, for brain functioning, that sleep need is actually constant at around 9 hours from age 12 to age 18. And obviously, this can be a bit of a hard sell to adolescents because you're probably sitting there thinking, that means that at age 17, I'm still supposed to go to bed at the same time as my little brother or sister who's 12. Obviously, that's a hard kind of pill to swallow. It's worth noting too that the education system does often fit with those social norms, not with the scientific norm. Obviously throughout school you get increasing amounts of study and homework, and that can reduce your sleep opportunity. So that's something that you've got to manage effectively as well, find times to fit that in. So what are some of the effects? And some of these are quite disturbing. They go way beyond tiredness. Sleep deprivation can lead to things like altered body image, screen addiction, obviously, poor food choices, and increased risk of obesity, higher stress levels, more susceptibility to infections, school lateness and absenteeism. You're more likely to be involved in different kinds of bullying. The next one's quite staggering. You are 15 times more likely to experience symptoms of depression and or anxiety if you're not getting enough sleep. So that link is huge. I can't overstate how important it is to get enough sleep for good mental health. Impaired ethical and moral judgment, increased risk of motor vehicle accidents. Think about college students driving to school after a poor night's sleep. Lower self-esteem, increased risk of drug use, of pregnancy, of family issues, and simple things like a loss of a sense of humor. Okay, you lose your sense of humor when you're tired. So before we dig into some of the ways that screens can affect our sleep, I'd like teachers for you to just pause the video here, go back to that hours of sleep quiz, that one question quiz, and have a look at the data. Have a quick chat with your group. What do you notice? How much sleep are people getting? And what are the potential impacts of that? So hopefully you paused the video there and you had a quick discussion, a quick look at the results. Hopefully everyone was getting 8 hours or more sleep, but my guess is it's probably less than that. Let's have a look now at 4 ways that screens sabotage our sleep. The first one's obvious. Screen time delays bedtime. The second one Engagement with devices is entertaining. It's highly addictive. We get a big rush of chemicals like dopamine, adrenaline, and cortisol through our body. These are awake promoting chemicals. These chemicals keep your body excited, aroused, engaged. The third one there, portability. More and more these days, we're using our devices in the bed instead of at desks, tables, on the couch. So this is blurring the psychological boundary between awake activities and sleep. The brain's kind of getting mixed messages, resulting in something that we call conditioned arousal. So that kind of leads to something called conditioned insomnia. Basically, you're training your brain to be awake in bed. That screen use in bed trains the brain that bed's a place of exciting, wakeful activity. And then we get this conditioned insomnia, which is the inability to get to sleep because of this wake training. What we notice too is that gaming and electronic messaging cause the highest levels of conditioned arousal, and they're also some of the most popular activities for adolescents using devices. Relating back to that social connectedness and FOMO I mentioned earlier, we kind of get this infomania, right? Where we're excited. We're in this excited state of waiting for a reply, and that keeps us up. So the fourth way that devices can damage our sleep is the blue screen effect. Some of you might have heard of this before, but the devices we use a kind of light called blue light that suppresses melatonin release. Melatonin is our sleep chemical. So basically, that blue light on our phones is telling our brain to wake up, that it's still daytime. And smaller screens are actually worse than lighter screens because there's more intensity of light and the screens are held closer to our faces. So probably our phones are the ones we're most likely to take into bed with us. They're also the ones that are going to be the least helpful as far as us trying to get to sleep. But you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm pretty good about that. I don't really use devices at night. I'm spending that time studying, doing assignments. A tired at night brain slows down, right? And it becomes more easily distracted, less attentive. So the homework and study completion takes longer. So bedtime is delayed. So sleep time is reduced. So the days and that evening's learning is not really consolidated properly into your long-term memory. And it's kind of forgotten. And the next day the same happens. And if you're getting to a pattern of doing that late night learning or study, it's essentially what we call futile learning. It's wasted learning. So this is why we provide things like study lines. It's up to you to kind of manage your time effectively, maybe do work in the earlier part of the evening, and then make sure you allow enough time late in the evening to have a proper sleep routine. What are some signs that you might have a bit of a sleep issue? Obviously, if you answered, 5 hours or less in that quick survey earlier, that might be a warning bell. Simple things like if you're full of energy, wide awake and kind of wired late at night, or if you're often lethargic and cranky first thing in the mornings, if you can't get out of bed on school mornings, you're slow to get dressed and have brekkie, these are pretty obvious signs. One to stop and think about for a second is have a think whether you can notice that you often have arguments with family members in the mornings, maybe more than other times. That might be a subtle signal that you're not getting sufficient sleep. And the other big one is having big weekend sleep-ins, okay? Very popular with adolescents. And this is basically just an attempt to catch up on lost sleep through the week. But sleep doesn't really work like a bank. You can't just fill it back up again. Once it's gone, it's gone. So if you're having those big weekend sleep-ins, that's a big alarm bell that maybe you need a better sleep routine, better sleep habits through the week. So what can you do? What are some positive, simple strategies to help you improve your sleep? First one is using the bed for sleep only. Try and avoid that conditioned arousal. Keep all devices out of the bed at all times, not just at bedtime. You could also have a bedtime lights out policy. You've got to commit to turning all the lights off though. So, you might want to start slow. Once you've committed, let's say no lights for 7 hours from 11 till 6, and then build up 8 hours and then work up to 9 maybe. You could open your blinds at a set time every morning. This tricks your brain or triggers your brain into waking up effectively, understanding that it's daytime. And it also trains your brain to feel tired at the right time at night. You could avoid caffeine after 6 p.m. Obviously, that's going to help, and that's a simple measure to take. Have an electronic clean out an hour before bed. You might have to sit with the FOMO for a little while, but keeping all devices out of the way for an hour before bed will make a big difference. And the last one there, try charging your phones somewhere else in the house, not in the bedroom. You can get everyone in the family on board with that, and hopefully that'll make a big difference too. So I'm going to send you back to the last little survey to name one thing you're willing to change.